I'm your host Joseph, Fiction Ink Flow. I'm your host Joseph, Fiction Ink Flow. I'm your host Joseph, Fiction Ink Flow.
If you don't have it, you are truly missing it.
What's up? I'm your host Joseph, Fiction Ink Flow. What's up, everybody? I'm your host Joseph, and welcome to Fiction Ink Flow. Today, I have something really special for you. So, with a lot of books coming out, it's kind of hard to choose, but one of the most popular books right now is Miss Marvel. And there's a new Miss Marvel book called Miss Marvel Beyond the Limit. And it's been selling like crazy. I've gotten the first two issues. I read through them really quickly. And I was like, you know what? I really would like to dive deeper into this character and what's going on with the story. And it just so happens I have the opportunity to bring something exclusive to you. I am getting ready to interview the author of Miss Marvel Beyond the Limit. I would like to introduce to you this best-selling young adult author, nonfiction author, and poet, Samara Ahmed.
Hi, Joseph.
Hey, thanks for joining us. I really appreciate you giving us this time.
Of course, always happy to talk comics and especially Miss Marvel.
Yes, that's one of my favorites going off the jump. So I've been a long time comic reader. I started collecting usually around high school, but I've been reading forever. And one thing I've always loved is that Marvel has always kind of had their hand in current issues and diversity. And that's what kind of drew me to Marvel to begin with. So it's only, I think, right now that they're just really expanding their catalog by adding all these diverse characters and different power sets.
Yeah, I mean, I really love that. I am a young adult writer also. I write novels, and I just had my first middle grade book come out. And I also used to be a high school English teacher. And so for me, I always like to say our shelves should reflect our world. And that is so, so important, especially with comics, because, young people and actually people of all ages are drawn to superheroes. And I feel like we're really having this cool comic renaissance right now, where we are seeing this sort of rise of these new interesting characters with interesting power sets. And we're even taking, some of these, the more sort of classic characters, Captain America, for example, and expanding that world of Cap and what that means. And, Marvel's really at the forefront of that. So it's really I'm very grateful to be part of that, part of that renaissance.
Yes, I say it's been no greater time to be a comic fan. With everything on movies and TV shows, it's this is the perfect time to be a comic fan. So I want to jump in with our first question. And it's, what led you to become an author?
Mm-hmm. So I always loved writing as a kid, but I never really imagined being a novelist. I had different ambitions, and I wanted to be a high school English teacher, and I was. And, I went nonprofit in New York City, and I was kind of always writing on the side for fun. Really, even as a kid, I was journalist since fifth grade, and writing short stories, writing poetry, and then I kind of got an idea for a novel, and it kind of just stuck out. Give this a try. So that's basically one of my first love. I mean, it was hard to get there because I was working while I was writing it, and writing the first draft, putting it away, kept bringing it out, editing and everything, and had to figure out how the industry works. But, I came to writing sort of later in my career, I guess you'd say, in my life. But I'm one of those people who always believes, there's no, there's no deadline on your dreams, and you can always have a new dream, whatever age you are. And this was a new dream I wanted to pursue.
Most definitely, and I think you have done it well.
Thank you.
You're welcome. No problem. So my next question is one I'm really curious about, is how did you get the opportunity to work for Marvel?
So, I mean, I already had published a few books, a few young adult novels. My first three, Love, Hate, and Other Filters, and Internment, and Mad, Bad, and Dangerous to Know. I hit the New York Times bestseller list, so I was kind of really in that world of teen fiction, right? And writing teen heroes. And I like to say that a lot of my stories have this through line of what I call the revolutionary girl. And I was familiar with Miss Marvel, of course, from Willow Wilson's run. And I had sort of in the back of my mind thought, gosh, wouldn't it be cool if I could maybe write a Miss Marvel novel? Because, Marvel is now is doing a lot of novelizations of their work for middle grade kids. There's a whole Spidey series written by Preeti Chibber. And then, of course, we're having, high school novels and, all different kinds of things like that. And I thought, well, I teach, I've taught, I write for young adults. Maybe there's a way I can get a chance to write a Miss Marvel novel. And then my agent was just in conversation with Marvel, and they were like, well, we'd actually like to approach Samira about writing Miss Marvel, the comic. And I was like, whoa, that's even cooler because that's like canon. I'm like all over that, right? So sort of that's how it came to be. So I think of it as kind of like it was written in the stars, a little bit of synchronicity there because it was something I wanted to do. And they thought my voice and sort of that theme that I had, this revolutionary girl theme, fit so well with Miss Marvel because like she's a revolutionary girl, right?
100%. Yeah, like I've noticed in the past few years, Marvel has gone in that direction of taking like traditional novelists and actually having them come and write comics. I know one of the first ones for me was Ta-Nehisi Coates, and he started writing Black Panther.
Yeah.
Now he's on Captain America, so I'm like, okay, I've been noticing this trend of getting traditional novelists to come in. So I think it's expanding the world and giving it from a different perspective. Because a lot of people have just stuck with like, I'm a true comic fan. I only want comic writers. I'm like, well, I get what you're saying, but I think it's great to always expand and open up so you can have a different viewpoint and to come in and get a different perspective of what's going on currently today.
Well, I understand longtime fans are just, they're really loyal and fiercely protective of their characters. So I get that. And I'm very loyal and protective of Miss Marvel too. But, when Marvel brings us in, like when they brought me in, they really were giving me the whole 101. Like, writing a novel is obviously very different than writing a comic book. But it's a collaborative process and it was a learning process, but, I want to stay true to Miss Marvel and, I'm a fan too. So I understand that fans are protective of her. But I think it's also cool to be able to, like you said, expand the universe, to bring more and different writers in, because as they're also creating these, more characters of color, more characters from marginalized groups, they also want to bring in authors that share some of those intersectionalities and share some of those backgrounds. And I think that's important. And the way to do that is to expand the pool of writers.
I agree 100%. 100%. So I'm going to jump right into our next question. And you kind of answered it a little bit, but did Marvel give you a choice of what comic to work on, or did they let you choose?
Well, Miss Marvel is the one they came to me with. And one of the things I do get to choose, though, are who might have a cameo or if there might be a little team up. There's going to be a little bit of a, I don't want to give any spoilers for the issues that are coming down in the series, but if you're eagle-eyed and check out some of the, your local comic book shop websites, I think the cover for issue 5 is already up. So I don't want to say yet, but you might see you might see a character in coming up in this miniseries.
Okay, and that's what I've heard various things. I've gone to different comic conventions and talked to different authors, and I've heard some say, well, yes, I guess if you're well known enough and you have a lot of history in the genre, they'll say, well, you can write whoever you want. And then I've also heard some people say, well, start off by writing Marvel characters, and then as you get further into it, you kind of open up and kind of develop your own characters and your own people.
Right. There will be a new character in this miniseries that I've been able to develop, so that's really cool. And of course, like you have to work collaboratively across Marvel. So if you are, for example, if there's another hero that you're bringing into the mix of your series that you're writing, you have to make sure that it fits within the larger continuity.
Yes.
Right. Because if I bring a character into Miss Marvel, say like I bring Spidey in here, but at the same time in his comic, say like I'm just doing Miles Morales, but Miles is off doing something else in his comic at the same time. That's not going to work. So we have to make sure the continuity fits and, get all of those things right. And that's where the editors are so important, because they're having all the, behind the scenes discussions with other editors and making sure that, everything is jives with the continuity.
No, that's one thing. This is no like disrespect to any other comic label or company, but that's one thing I've always loved about Marvel is the continuity. It's just how they just bridge that together. Because I can actually read a book, like you said, and figure like this character's doing this here, but then they took a break and they're coming over to this book. And they always tend to connect those things really well. And to me, that makes a very fluid reading. When it's like I can actually know what's happening with different characters in different books when they pop in and out and what's going on with them. Because other books I think have struggled with that, and that's kind of where my frustration has come with reading other books, like not being able to figure out like, okay, you fight this major scene here, but yet you're off on a planet doing something else in this other book. Like, wait a minute, what's happening?
How did you get from one to the other? Marvel is really great about that, and they, I will go to my editors and ask a question like, hey, did Miss Marvel, has she ever met this guy, or did she interact with this? Like, because I of course read all the Miss Marvel run, but she has been in other, series too. She's been in Champions, and we've seen her like in other places, and there's references to her in other places. So, that's why it's important that we have this real team effort in creating the comic, because it's very hard for one writer to have read, all of the comics, right, and to remember all of it. Even as I've read, like I just go back so often to even just Miss Marvel's run to make sure, okay, this thing happened with Bruno, or this thing happened with Nakia. So I have to make sure that it's all, it's all right. And it's paying homage to the history.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard so many great things about Marvel's House of Ideas, and that's the real process. Like I really love, I would love to be on the ground floor, just as a fly on the wall one day, just to see how the process works. All right. Go ahead and get to our next question, which you kind of already answered. You're already like jumping ahead of me, which is great. Were you familiar with this Marvel prior to working on the comic? You kind of already tell us that, but kind of how did
definitely. I mean, because when Miss Marvel came on the scene, it was, created by, the writer was G. Willow Wilson, and the editor was Sana Amanat, and they're like two like legends in the comic industry. And they created this amazing character, this Muslim Pakistani girl superhero, completely new, unheard of, unprecedented. Like I said, this revolutionary girl. And I was like, what is this? This is so cool. And I remember seeing the first cover. It was like so iconic. Like you don't even really see her full face, but you see this young woman with her fist, and she's clearly a student, and she's wearing this scarf. And I was like, oh, that is really cool. It felt iconic from the moment it hit the stands, And what I really loved about it is that she's just like a regular girl. She's truly a teen superhero. And I kind of think of her as sort of Spidey, like in the early days.
Yeah.
She has a lot of those similarities, and her family's important to her, and they're there. And she has this friend group that's so important to her. And I thought that was really cool, because I mean, personally, I do get why we sometimes like to have this sort of darker backstory to some of our heroes, especially, some of the ones who've been around the block a few times have a little bit of that cynicism in them. But for these teen characters, I think so much of hope is involved in their story. And that's what I loved about Miss Marvel's story. She had that, she has her family, she has her friends, and they're part of her heroism too. Like that's where she draws strength from. And I think that's really important. For her. So I love that about her from the beginning. And also just as, a South Asian and a Muslim, I was like, wow, imagine if I had this as a kid, this would have been so cool.
Yes.
And I think it's so cool for kids who can have it now. And that's why it's really fun for me now to be able to write this character and to have young people come up to me and, just express like their love for her. And, the day the first issue came out, hit stands, I was getting texts and stuff like that from friends, with their kids holding up the comic. And, this one friend's daughter had like made a little homemade like Miss Marvel costume, and she also made like a t-shirt for her grandma, and like with the lightning bolt, and they were wearing it together, taking a picture. And it's just that's just like so sweet to see, and it's just really makes you realize, this is why I'm doing it. All these kids, sometimes I have kids in the neighborhood who know me because I've been at, done book events at a local bookstore, and I've had some kids just stop me on the street, like when I'm passing a local school, and they're like, hey, are you Samara? You're writing Miss Marvel, right? And honestly, that is just such an amazing, fun experience to have. And that's why I love being able to be part of Miss Marvel's world, because I've, known about her and have really been a fan of her since the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, your comparisons to the early days of Spidey is spot on. because like that's what I thought about when I first read the book. Like there was this like you say, this amount of hope. There was this relation of understanding, like, you know, getting inside a teen's mind and going through all the different angst, the insecurities, the confidence at times, the overconfidence, you know, mentioning food and family, like all of it just fit. And I was like, yes, this is like perfect. And of course, I do have my issue 1. I have the variant.
Oh, I love that one. Yeah, that's like the 10-year Miles Morales like homage issue, which I think is great.
And he's rocking his homemade Spidey costume in this one.
I know, it's so great. The variant, the art is so amazing. I'm just like blown away by the artist. You know, of all the variants, and Michal's cover for the first issue, and then the inside art by Andres Genolay. Like, I love it so much.
I love it.
And the colors by Triona. I mean, yeah, it's so cool.
It's perfect. And I was very fortunate in my local comic book shop, First Aid Comic, to get a signed copy.
Oh, yay!
And I was like, yes. I was like, okay. And I was like, I ran to the store because when I left my job, comic book shops usually sell out of all like the signed stuff pretty early. So I kind of got there, and I got one of the last ones that was on the shelf. And I was like,
oh, I'm so glad that you got it. I mean, that's a cool cover. I really love that one. I tried to really bring in some of that South Asian flavor into that second issue.
I love seeing that Loki on the riding the elephant. That was like perfect for me. It was perfect. All right, thank you. Going into my next one. So what comics helped to inspire or influence you as you were going through this process?
Well, I mean, I think going through this process, I mean, obviously it was like the earlier Miss Marvels. I definitely looked at some of the Spideys. I also looked at some of the other sort of teen characters, you know, Unstoppable Wasp, you know, some of the other champions. I mean, of course, we're in Chicago, so Ironheart, Riri, yes. we gotta you know, look at her. And you know, going through all the champions. So I was really kind of in the milieu surrounding Miss Marvel. That I was sort of inspired by, but also for some of the readers who've gotten into this, they'll see there's a little multiverse angle in this comic book miniseries. So I don't want to, like I said, I don't want to give away too much, but I did like hit on some of the multiverse, you know, pieces.
I get that. And I want to give it away because I want people to go get this book, because it really does hit at that multiversal part in for a second. I won't say what it is, but you got to go read issues 1 and 2.
It's just, it was really fun to do that. And then, but if you mean inspiration, like from my childhood, like some of the things that I was bringing into it.
If you get inspiration from any comics growing up. Yeah.
Well, so when I was a kid, I was really reading Archie, right? And it's interesting because that's an entry point for a lot of girls in the comics, because especially at the time, you know, girls were not really encouraged to read comics. You know, and Archie was sort of like, it was like the high school kids. And of course, like I was reading it before I was in high school. So I was kind of fascinated by it, because you get to read about the older kids, what's happening, their social lives, all that kind of stuff. And then, you know, I also really liked Wonder Woman, because she was, you know, that's DC, but she was, she was, you know, of course she's like an incredibly iconic, legendary character, but she was also, you know, had the TV show. And, you know, she was a woman character that girls could, you know, that girls were drawn to because she had powers. She was like, and if you watch the TV show in the 70s, she was like beating up the guys. She was, you know, she was out there kicking butt, and, you know, it definitely had this like that feminist twist. And so I think, you know, those were the ones that I was drawn to. And then when I was in high school, that was when, you know, that was like the late 80s, and Batman was really rising in popularity. And that was also, there was this super iconic issue called Death in the Family. And that's where the second Robin died.
Yes.
And that was such a big deal. And so I remember at the time, like when I was in high school, like everybody was reading that one. Like we knew Batman, you know, Robin was going to die, because it was so amazing, because DC actually ran like a call-in, like a kind of a contest about like, should, gosh, I'm even forgetting which Robin this was. I forgot which Robin, what his name was. Dick. Yeah. So yes, exactly. People were finding him like, he was becoming unpopular. He was getting like really violent with the criminals, and Batman was even kind of trying to get a leash on him. And then they did a call-in, like, what should happen to this character? Should he live or die? And I was like, what? It was so bananas, because it was kind of unheard of. But I remember that just being like, that's also a super iconic issue, I think. I mean, that
Oh yeah,
there's that image of like Batman like holding like a dead Robin in his hands, you know, in his arms, and walking through this wreckage after this bomb, I think it was. But I mean, that was so long ago, but it still really is in my memory because it was really such a, you know, part of the zeitgeist. Like people were talking about it. That was a comic book that, you know, young people, but also older people were talking about. It just felt like it was everywhere.
Yeah, it was on the minds of everyone. And I remember hearing a lot about that because I didn't actually get to read the actual book when it came out. I got the graphic novel later, and just how like iconic and just amazing that whole run was. And they even recently did a sequel follow-up called, because I think that was called Death in the Family. They did a follow-up called Death of the Family, where they kind of tried to kill off almost everyone. Like Joker kind of revealed he knew who everybody was. And I was like, wow. So, yeah.
I mean, yeah, so that I remember that really, I mean, I was in high school, so that was kind of the first time I kind of thought about like the power of comics. To start conversations, to, you know, bring people together to talk about things. And that was also around the time where the first Batman movie was coming out.
Yes. Oh, this is everything.
Yeah, it was amazing. And I mean, I was a kid who loved like those Superman movies, like the Christopher Reeve ones. I was a little kid. But then the Batman ones were kind of like, you know, they were kind of another step up. There was a little bit of a darkness to them because Batman had that dark side. Yes. So, which Superman doesn't. So I think that was really, in high school was the time I sort of really understood the power of comics.
Okay. Thank you. Last one, one of the last ones is, can you share a little bit about your creative process?
Well, for comics, it's a little bit different for novels than for novels. But in comics, I sort of, you know, I sort of like sketch out and think about ideas I'm reading a lot of Miss Marvels, and then I just have a little notebook and I'm kind of brainstorming ideas. Like, what are things I'd like to see Kamala do? And what are the things I want to see her tested by?
Okay.
And, you know, sort of, I'll start jotting down ideas, and it's really a brainstorm. And then from that, I'll start sort of honing into like kind of a paragraph of like what I want to encapsulate in like the like in this mini series run. And then I talk it out with my editor, right? I have two editors, with my editors, Lauren and Caitlin, and we kind of talk it out, and, you know, we kind of outline it like sort of like in our minds. We talk a little bit about, okay, well, how would this go? Who is the bad guy that's going to come in? What are the challenges going to be, and all this stuff. And then I really write it out. You know, I have to write the whole script. So like it's a 20-page script, and then I'm writing each panel. But before I do that, I, in my mind, like create an outline of what's going to happen on each page. And then I break down the action and the dialogue and how many panels I need. And, you know, then I go back and forth with the editor, and sometimes we realize, well, we need another panel. There's too much action in this one, or we can cut down a panel here, or maybe there's too much dialogue. This is a panel where the art really needs to speak for itself. You know, especially on those cool, like, you know, on like the double page spread or a splash page. Yeah. Sometimes you just really want the art to talk, you know, and it does. And the artists, then you get to collaborate with the artist, and you're like, wow, he's bringing my words to life. That is so cool.
Yeah. And I've always wondered, because as an inspiring comic book author myself, I wrote my first script, and I kind of got that done. I kind of got into a little lull for a while. And I just, like, you know, as I was writing mine, I got into the minds of the characters and trying to figure stuff out. And like you said, the layout was like how things were looking, what will happen, what's going to happen, I should say. And I look at some books and I read them, and I was like, there was hardly anything going on. And it wasn't that good to me. But then I like, oh, well, this one didn't have a lot of action, but it was so powerful. And that just, I think, speaks to the different styles that people write in. Because like I said, I've read some books where it's like, I need some action to make it go forward, but others where it was just like hardly anything. And I think one of the most interesting ones I ever read, it was a book where it was no words at all. It was talking about the X-Men, Cyclops. And it was the whole book from his perspective in his glasses. So everything was red. Every page was like red, with that ruby red quartz. And it was just different scenarios. And just like, wow, like giving that insight into how he sees the world. I was like, wow, that just blew my mind.
That's cool. Yeah, I mean, I think it's just every comic is just, you know, the creative team brings their own spin on it, and they just think that's what's so cool about comics. I mean, we get to see them, you know, you're reading a run and you're like excited for the next one, and you're like, okay, wait, I gotta wait a month, I gotta wait 3 weeks, but it's just so cool to see how all these different comics, like when you go into your local comic shop, I mean, I just love seeing that array of comics and seeing like all the different artists' takes on it. And you know, even if you just are looking at like all the Spideys, right? You're looking at like the Miles, you're looking at the different Spider-Mans, you know, it just, I love seeing all these different spins and the twists that you can put on it, and then what the artist can convey just with, you know, with the art.
I tell you, even to this day, one of the things I love to do, like even if I say I'm gonna stop buying comic books, I love just going to the store and seeing all the new issues. Like I'm a variant hunter, so like when I see a good variant cover, like oh, this was not like anyone else, I want to grab that one, and I kind of like try to get them signed and bagged and everything, so I can have like a nice huge collection. So
that's great. I know new comic book day is fun, right?
It really is, and I still get, like I said, I still feel like a kid again when I go in and just see all those new books in the shop.
Yeah, totally.
All right, and our last question, which I ask of all my guests: when did you fall in love with comics?
I mean, it was probably around the time of that Batman. It was when I first, like I said, I first saw the power of comics. But then, you know, like I probably dropped off of reading comics for a while. And then when Miss Marvel came back on the scene about like 8 years ago, that was something that really made me think, wow, comics are changing in a super cool way. It's like basically with the advent of Miles and Miss Marvel, with Miles Morales and Miss Marvel, I just really, I mean, I don't know, I got like that sort of tingly feeling like comics are doing something amazing. And that was, I guess Miles has been like 10 years now?
Yeah, it has been.
10 years. And so I don't know, probably right around then was like when my passion was like reignited. And also the art has been, I mean, look, the art has always been great. I love the golden age of comics. I think all that is so cool, but I love now how we're even pushing the boundaries in the art a little bit. I just love it.
Yeah, the digital era of art is like, just blows your mind. Looking at some of those covers, like, how did they do this? And it's just like, it's just amazing. Like I can't think of any other words really to describe it. Like you're just seeing how they put images together, how things happen, like reflections on things. And
oh yeah, I mean, like in the first Miss Marvel, like I actually said it. You know, all of Chicagoans know I said it in Chicago. I have her visiting like a cousin in Chicago, because every South Asian has relatives in Chicago. But one of the reasons I wanted to is because Miss Marvel's gone through so much. You know, so many things have happened to her in a very short time, and I wanted to have literally this moment of reflection because, you know, I do think you need to mix action with sometimes like having those slightly quieter reflective moments. And that's what got me thinking about like, what is more reflective than the Bean, right? This cool sculpture in Chicago. And then Andres Genele, the artist, I described to him what I wanted. I was like, I want this scene where she's sort of seeing like her life, you know, reflected in the Bean. Because anyone who's been to the Bean knows you can see your reflection endlessly. So it's like an infinity of you. And that was so inspiring to me. And I explained all this stuff to him because it's also a way for me to be able to talk to new readers about things that have happened in her life, in Miss Marvel's life, right? Because if you're a new reader, maybe you're picking this comic up for the first time, you might want to know a little bit of the backstory, but you could still get it in this super cool way. And then he did this reflection and I was like, oh my God, how did you do this? This is so cool.
Yeah. It's good to have a little flashback moment and a point to like, you get the new readers who are very new to the character completely, to give them a little bit of the history without overwhelming them.
Right. But then also give like, you know, it's a little nod to, you know, sort of the fans who can like sort of relive some of the greatest moments.
Chicagoan, I appreciate any time my city gets mentioned in a positive way. So like when they had the Riri Williams with the Ironheart, I'm like, yes, she's from Chicago, South Side, same as me. And then you had that first issue with Ms. Marvel in the South Side. I mean, in Chicago, I was just like, okay, I'm loving this right here.
Yeah, it was fun to do that. It was fun to have that.
But thank you so much for joining me and granting me this interview. I appreciate your time.
Thanks so much for having me. It's always, like I said, it's always fun to talk about comics.
And I'll show you one of my last ones. This is from my daughter has this in her room, and she let me borrow it to use for the stream today. But she's had this since we went to the Marvel exhibit at the Museum of Science and Industry.
Oh, right. I love that pop. That's so great. I actually have a Miss Marvel pop in my office too. She's my little, you know, my little pop of inspiration. I love the pops. I can see you do too. I can see
yes,
you
I have
behind
a bunch of them back there. Yes, I do. Once again, thank you again, and thank you all for joining us, and I'll catch you next time. Peace. We are talking about Fiction Ink Flow. What's up?
If you don't have it, you are truly missing
Fiction
out.
Ink Flow. What's up? We are talking about Fiction Ink Flow. What's up?